You are lying next to someone in the dark, and somewhere in the back of your mind a quiet question never fully goes away: is this child mine? It is one of the oldest anxieties a human male can carry, and today we have a clean answer. A cheek swab, a lab, a number printed on a page that ends the doubt forever. Roughly 4 million paternity tests are run worldwide every year, and the market for them is worth over $1 billion. We have turned the question into a transaction. But press your thumb against that certainty and feel how thin it is. For 300,000 years of human existence, there was no swab, no lab, no number. A man could look at an infant and never truly know. So how did your ancestors live with a question that had no answer? And what did they build in their bodies, in their marriages, in their entire societies to survive it? Let's start with the biology, because the problem is older than humanity itself. Paternity uncertainty is not a cultural quirk. It is a structural fact of internal fertilization. A mother is never in doubt. She carries the pregnancy. She gives birth. The link is witnessed. The father has no such anchor. Anthropologists call this the problem of paternity certainty. And for most of human history, it sat near the center of how men invested their time, their food, and their protection. Around 12,000 years ago, when the first farmers began storing grain and passing land to children, the stakes exploded. Suddenly, fatherhood was not just about feeding a child, it was about who inherited the field. The question stopped being private. It became the hinge on which property, status, and lineage turned. In 1972, biologist Robert Trivers published a paper on parental investment that reframed the whole problem. His insight was simple and brutal. The parent who invests more is the one selected to be choosier, and the parent who can be deceived about parenthood will evolve defenses against that deception. For human males, the deception was always possible. A man feeding a child for 15 years was making an enormous bet, and evolution does not look kindly on bad bets. Trivers argued that much of male psychology, the vigilance, the mate guarding, the jealousy that feels so irrational in the modern world, is the residue of that ancient wager. It was never about love alone. It was about the cost of being wrong. In 2006, a team of geneticists led by Kermyt Anderson reviewed studies of actual misattributed paternity, cases where the social father was not the biological one. The popular number people repeat is around 10%, but Anderson's careful work found that in populations where men had high confidence, the real rate was closer to 2%. The lesson was not that infidelity was rare. It was that the systems humans built to manage the question actually worked. Men were not simply guessing in the dark. They had assembled, over millennia, a toolkit of strategies, biological, social, and cultural, that pushed the odds in their favor without ever needing a test. That toolkit had 6 parts. Resemblance. Newborns across cultures are described, loudly and immediately, as looking like the father. Studies suggest mothers and relatives emphasize paternal resemblance far more than maternal, a social reflex that quietly reassures the man and binds him to the child. Mate guarding. The jealousy, the watchfulness, the discomfort when a partner spends time alone with a rival, uncomfortable now, but ancient insurance then. Reputation. In small bands where everyone knew everyone, a woman's faithfulness and a man's standing were public knowledge. Gossip was not idle, it was a paternity tracking system. Pair bonding, the human tendency to form lasting couples, rare among mammals, reduced uncertainty by limiting the field. Love, in part, was a confidence mechanism. Kin networks. A mother's brothers often invested heavily in her children, because a man is always certain his sister's children share his blood, even when his wife's might not. Anthropologists call this the avunculate, and it appears across the world. Concealed ovulation. Human females, almost uniquely, hide their fertile window, which kept men present and attentive across the whole cycle rather than only at conception. Each of these was a workaround for a question biology refused to answer. But notice what modern life took from each one. Paternity testing took the resemblance ritual. No one needs to study a baby's nose anymore. Urban anonymity took the reputation system. Your neighbors no longer know or care who you spend your evenings with. Mobility took the kin network. The uncle who would have raised your children lives 2,000 miles away. Contraception untangled sex from conception entirely. The scaffolding that held male investment in place for 250,000 years was dismantled in roughly a century, and almost no one noticed it falling. So what do we do with the jealousy, the vigilance, the quiet question that still surfaces in the dark? The science offers a strange comfort. The instinct is not a flaw in you. It is an answer to a problem your ancestors faced every single day, carried forward into a world that mostly solved it. Naming it that way drains some of its power. You can recognize the old alarm without obeying it. The men who survived to become your ancestors were not the trusting ones or the paranoid ones. They were the ones who could hold the uncertainty and still choose to invest, to stay, to raise a child they could never be fully sure was theirs. That choice, made millions of times, is part of why you exist. Tonight, somewhere, a man is holding a phone with a test result on it, ending in a few seconds a doubt his ancestors carried to their graves. Your body still remembers the older way. The watchfulness that flickers in you is a fossil of a time when love was a bet placed in the dark, when a father gave 15 years of his life on faith alone. They never got the certainty you can buy. And still, generation after generation, in the long silence before any answer existed, they stayed.